Recent events in Pakistan have put the spotlight squarely on the deteriorating security situation in the country. Just last month, more than 100 people were killed in a suicide bombing in a mosque in the city of Peshawar. There's strong suspicions it was the work of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, also called the Pakistan Taliban. The group's been fighting the Pakistan government for more than a decade and wants to install its own conservative system of Islamic governance in Pakistan's western regions bordering Afghanistan. And joining me now for more is Pakistan's Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Hina Rabbani Khar. She joins me from Munich, where the Munich Security Conference is taking place. Ms. Khar, welcome. Thank you for making the time. Let's talk about security first. There's been a rise in terror attacks attributed to the Pakistan Taliban since the group unilaterally ended a ceasefire with your government last November. Is Pakistan being able to protect its citizens since then?
Look, Pakistan seems to be continues. You cannot change your geography. So we continue to be at the crossroads of great power games. And that obviously has an impact. I think the current escalation in the security threats which are arising for the citizens of Pakistan is literally a direct result of a very hurried departure from Afghanistan of NATO forces. And as that happens, every time a void is left, that does create problems for the region. But Pakistan, I think, is a country which has shown its resolve and is equipped to deal with the challenges that arise. We have been at the forefront of the recipient of terrorism and terrorism games from across the borders. Unfortunately, we continue to be so right now. But as I said, I think we are the country, its people, its institutions are resolved to be able to deal with this new threat, which has emerged, by the way, after tens of thousands of sacrifices which have been made by the soldiers, law enforcement agencies, and the citizens of Pakistan in this fight against terrorism. And as you may remember, Pakistan was able to de-escalate the threat that had emanated from there to quite an extent. And we had a good few years where there was a de-escalation. Now we see another escalation. But we are quite sure, inshallah, that we should be able to deal with it before it becomes a bigger danger.
Let's talk about the security forces that you mentioned. Now, last month, after more than 100 people, mostly law enforcement officers, were killed in a suicide bombing in Peshawar, armed police wearing uniforms protested in the streets against terrorism and injustices faced by Khyber Pakhtunkhwa police. If police themselves are protesting for their rights and safety, how can ordinary citizens feel safe?
Look, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa police has given their lives and has been, as I said before, been forced to be at the forefront of this global games in many ways, right? And they have seen 10 years of sacrifices give rich dividends, and then their sacrifices being questioned again. So I would not question them wanting more security for themselves. That's how a state operates. Pakistan is proud to be a democratic state, which means that peaceful protest by anyone, including law enforcement agencies, about what they consider to be an emanating danger is perfectly fine. That's how states function. That's how states do self-correction. And Pakistan is a state which is not going to,
I understand that, ma'am. I'm sorry to interrupt, but doesn't this protest by the police, the people who are supposed to protect the citizens, indicate that something is not working with the system?
Look, I don't think it's about the system as much as it is about the threat that is emanating. The threat
but the police were protesting against the system. That's what their slogans, that's what their notices and the boards they were carrying was saying.
Look, you can portray it as that, but the police lost tens of their comrades in this threat, and for them to say that we need to take this very seriously and our protection needs to be guaranteed by the state is an absolute legitimate request or demand. And
so
by no means are we going to question. We are on our way to fulfill it. We have been fulfilling it in the past, and they have been disproportionately affected. That's a fact. I'm not going to sit here and say that the police in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has been given all the protection, as much protection as the state can give. But the threat that is emanated is of a very unique nature, because you see that all of the ammunition and sophisticated hardware, night vision goggles and all the sophisticated things that Western militaries typically use was left unattended. in our neighborhood. And
are you saying that the Western militaries should come and deal with this threat instead of Pakistan?
Did I say that?
I don't know. I'm trying to understand. You keep saying that the Western militaries withdrew and they have all this high-tech equipment. You're not telling me what the government's plan is to deal with the Pakistan Taliban.
Yes. I didn't follow your last bit, but if you allow me, I will make you understand what I'm saying. I'm saying that the void that is left in a hurried, unplanned exit has consequences for the region. It doesn't have consequences for countries which are far away, but it has consequences for countries which have a 2,600-kilometer border where a 20-year war was waged and left unfinished, unplanned in a hurried exit. That has consequences. Currently, we are facing those consequences. That is exactly what I'm saying. Now, you can ask me a question pertaining to that or anything.
What is Pakistan's plan to deal with this uptick in violence from the Pakistan Taliban?
So Pakistan's plan is twofold. One is to ensure that on the border, now that we have the fencing, which is sometimes challenged, we are able to have zero tolerance for anyone breaching that security. So we owe a lot to everyone else, but we first owe it to our citizens to provide them protection. So they will be taking no chances in terms of any threat that emanates from the borders in terms of the security situation over there. That is one response. And the second response obviously always has to be internal. And in fact, the most important response has to be internal. And internal, equipping the CTD department, which is the counterterrorism department within the Pakhtunkhwa police, and ensuring that all institutions are able to work together to be able to deal with this threat, as they are right now. Because you see, you only see, or the world media or the world only sees the threats which we are not able to control.
Right.
How many people know that we control on a daily basis? I'm just saying the proportion of the threat is far more than is acceptable or is fashionable to accept in the world, because it is really a direct corollary or a direct result of a departure which was not planned, which had immense ramifications and repercussions.
The government that is left in Kabul right now, Pakistan has had close relations with it. I'm talking about the Afghan Taliban. This is a group that you yourself have interacted with. You were, in fact, in Kabul in November, just a day after this ceasefire was ended. Is the Afghan Taliban cooperating with Pakistan when it comes to withdrawing or curtailing its support of the Pakistan Taliban?
Look, this is an area where Pakistan has shown and conveyed that we will have, this is our red line. This is our zero tolerance issue. And in that, like with any other entity, we continue to engage with them. And we continue to make that point very clear, that if a threat emanates from across the border and it is not curtailed and controlled as per the commitments, then obviously, that becomes a problematic situation. But as far as conveying this to them is concerned, it remains, it has been done at the highest level and every level possible. I myself, as you have recalled, was in Kabul to convey similar messages and more pertaining to various other issues. As I said, we have a 2,600-kilometer border with them. So you can imagine that the issues can be quite a lot. But I think the approach has to be that of trying to solve the problem rather than create the noise. I think too much of our foreign policy sometimes gets, completely overwhelmed by making the right noise. I think Pakistan is more interested in getting the job done rather than just making the noise.
Let's talk about getting the job done. And here is where I'd like to talk about bilateral ties between India and Pakistan, which have been virtually frozen since August 2019. Under what conditions do you see there being a thaw in relations?
Look, it needs to be said, as someone who's operated in this zone of foreign policy management, at least actively for the last 10 years and has been in and around it for the last 20 years, I cannot sit here and, in any way try and justify how badly this region has done. And there are many, many reasons for this. I can just tell you, to put it simplistically, that it takes two to tango. And this is a government that I represent, which is a coalition government, where the Pakistan People's Party's government in 2010 decided to normalize trade and really give a serious chance to the India-Pakistan relationship, because we thought on the other side we had someone who wanted a legacy of peace. Now, unfortunately, in India, and I think nothing explains it more than the BBC documentary which came out, and how the Indian state reacted to an organization like the BBC, how it curtailed them, how it went and did attacks on their office. Now, imagine the same government and what it does to the Kashmiri people and lies unattended. Now, 5th August was a really big day because the government of India decided to go in what I call rogue on every commitment that it has as a state to the international institutions, to the UNSC, to the Kashmiri people, to Pakistan in similar agreement, and everything else. Now, how do you deal with a situation like that? So you can extend as many hands of peace and, great language. Eventually, we have to move together. The moment we see that there is any appetite whatsoever to move forward, I think you will find Pakistan running to the, running to the opportunity.
There were reports that India has invited Foreign Minister Bilal Bhutto Zardari to India in May for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting. Are those reports true? Has that invitation been received by Pakistan? And if so, will Foreign Minister Zardari attend?
Look, I think those things we normally decide as per the routine, as and when they arrive and as and when the dates come closer. But let me just clearly point out that when it comes to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Pakistan attaches great importance to it. Unfortunately, we have seen India become in a major roadblock towards the cooperation that could have been done in the SAARC region. We would certainly not want SCO to fall prey to the same adventurism, if I want to call it. So Pakistan will look at this as and when the time comes, and Pakistan will try its best to look at it from the SCO framework rather than from a bilateral framework.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hina Rabbani Khar, Deputy Foreign Minister of Pakistan. Thank you, ma'am.